Tonight we have a public hearing preceding the Committee of the Whole meeting, and that'll be chaired by Bill Brown. So I wanted to give the notice of the public hearing. It will be held tonight in the Urbana City Council chambers. We'll receive public input on a proposed agreement authorizing Prairie Fruits Farm and Creamery, LLC, to lease from the City of Urbana certain parcels of real estate having PIN numbers 25, 15, 29, 400, 023, and 25, 15, 29, 400, 024, located east of the intersection of Olympian Drive and North Lincoln Avenue in Somer Township in unincorporated Champaign County. The parcels will be used for farming and vehicle parking. Will the clerk, I'd like to call this public hearing to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Brown?
Here.
Hazen? Hersey?
Here.
Jacobson?
Here.
Miller?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Whoa. And Mayor Marlin.
Here. Does anyone wish to speak during this public hearing? Okay. Seeing no public input, I'm going to close this hearing. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the meeting of Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole, Tuesday, November 12th. Could the clerk please call the roll?
City Council members Brown?
Here.
Hazen? Hersey?
Here.
Jacobson?
Here.
Miller?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Wu? Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Next is approval of the minutes for the previous meeting. You should have gotten some corrected minutes on your desk tonight, and they were emailed earlier. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I can second, but I can ask about one of the corrections.
It's
right.
been moved by Jared and seconded by Dennis. Discussion, corrections?
Yeah, well,
Dennis.
I didn't notice that there was a revision, but my name was again left off of those present. I think probably they just picked up the same list that they had last week or whatever. And I know I was present because I made a motion or seconded something later on in the meeting, so.
Boilerplate being used, yes, sorry.
You weren't present or absent. Okay.
I was never. I was invisible.
Dennis was present. Any other corrections? Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. The minutes are approved. Any additions to the agenda? Seeing none. Presentations. Public input. Let's have public input. I have one card from Matt Riggs to speak on the food and beverage tax. Oh, but you wanted to speak at the time of the ordinance. Okay, so we'll hold off on that. Any presentations? No. Staff report. Kevin.
Just real briefly, I wanted to call attention to an email I think all council members got earlier today about an open house for a proposed plasma collection facility at 907 North Lincoln Avenue. And that is taking place tomorrow night from 6:30 to 8:30 at Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary School at 1108 Fairview Drive.
That's blood plasma, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Could you say the time again?
Yeah, it's from 6:30 to 8:30, and it's going to be more like an open house. So if you can't make it there at 6:30 or even 7, you can still show up at some point during that time period. And
Is there going to be any type of formal like information giving, or is this the people that want to do the building? They're just like passing out brochures.
Well, I think it's going to be a little more in-depth than that, so.
Okay.
But they'll be there to talk to folks and answer questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other staff reports? Brandon Boyes.
I'm pleased to introduce our new Economic Development Coordinator, Stephanie McMahon.
Stephanie has served as the director of the Sullivan Chamber and Economic Development for 13 years, where she developed a passion for improving the viability of communities through downtown development, the arts, and workforce development. Stephanie is recipient to both the Distinguished Economic Developer Award from the Illinois Economic Development Association and the Innovative Solutions Award from the Illinois Workforce Partnership. And she expects to receive her master's degree in Community and Economic Development from Western Illinois University this fall. Most recently, Stephanie was the facilitator of the Douglas County CEO program. That stands for Creating Entrepreneurship Opportunities, where she guided high school students in developing resourcefulness, teamwork, networking, and soft skills through meeting with community leaders and business owners. Stephanie's been married to her husband Mark for 30 years. They love to travel and find inspiration by driving the back roads before returning to their home in Sullivan. They have 2 adult children, Madeline and Lane, and we are just so delighted to have Stephanie joining our team.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome this week. I'm really excited to see what's happening here in Urbana and get to work right alongside all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to the team.
Yeah, welcome
Yes.
indeed.
Welcome. Okay, any other staff reports? Seeing none, the first item on our agenda is ordinance number 2019-11-062, an ordinance authorizing the lease of parcels with pins 251529-423 and 251529-424 to Prairie Fruits Farm Limited LLC Community Development. Brandon.
Hello again. Council is asked to consider this draft lease with Wes Gerald and Leslie Cooper Band of Prairie Foods Farm LLC for the lease for agricultural use of unused city right-of-way. The proposed lease is a result of a public request for proposals seeking a tenant that would use the site to support the regional food economy with food crops, value-added processing, and agritourism-related uses. The proposed lease with Prairie Fruits Farm was seen as the most responsive responded to the RFP with their proposal and allow this tenant to implement their vision of the Nourish Urbana farm. The full proposal is included in the packet. A public hearing was held this evening, November 12th, after being noticed duly in the News Gazette. The proposed lease is for a 5-year term, and it incorporates an existing lease for parking, use of parking on that north lot next to the drainage basin that was pre-existing with Prairie Foods LLC, Prairie Foods Farm LLC, before they were selected to be the agricultural tenant for the southern parcel. So it's really just a matter of administrative convenience that those two are included in one lease before you. The lease also allows for access to water in that detention basin on the north lot. The city would have the ability to terminate the lease with just 6 months' notice. However, the city does not have any plan for any infrastructure improvements in this right-of-way for at least 5 years at present, given its omission from the capital improvements plan. However, that could change, and again, it would require 6 months' notice for the city to end this current arrangement. I'm going to allow the tenants to go into some detail on their proposal. The fiscal impact of the city is a 5-year lease at $350 per year, and the tenant would be responsible for paying any and all taxes assessed by the county on the property, as it's not in the city limits. Staff is recommending approval of this ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into this lease agreement. Again, the right-of-way is currently unused except for current agricultural use, but the tenant that was selected as a result of the RFP process is expected to result in greater activation of these parcels with organic heirloom agriculture alongside community-oriented and agritourism uses. Are there any questions for staff before we hear from the tenants?
There was one section that made my eyebrows raise just a little bit, which was that the tenant on, moving away from the property at the conclusion of operations should restore the soil to the inferior level that it was at the beginning. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, this was a specific part of the negotiation of the lease. You know, it's standard language in our lease that the property has to be in the condition you got it in. And in this instance, the investment in the soil over 5 years to turn it into organic soil is a significant investment on behalf of the tenant. In this instance, the city's only desired use for this property, the fill, would be for, you know, future roadworks or other, you know, construction-related fill. So we don't need soil of high quality. We just need soil of equal quantity and equal condition of what's there at the end of the lease as is there at the beginning of the lease.
But as I read it, maybe I misinterpreted the language, it would be mandatory for them to, you know, degrade the soil before they leave.
No, it's an option of the
That's an option, okay.
of the lease.
Okay, glad to clear that up.
Yeah. And so I'm going to invite up Wes Gerald of Prairie Fruits Farm and Katie Gregg of Time and Temperance Farm.
Thank you, Brandon, Mayor Marlin, and council members. Thanks for that comment, Eric. We had no intention of degrading it. I'd like to introduce Katie Gregg, who joined us in this presentation. We were focusing a lot on, primarily on some specialty grains, food grains, and Katie's really interested in doing vegetables out there too. So we're going to be combining to do that. Let's see, do we have a presentation? You got it? Okay, just a very short one. A little background for those of you who may not know us. We came here in 2003, started Prairie Fruits Farm, became the first licensed farmstead creamery in Illinois. My wife founded Illinois Farm Beginnings, training beginning farmers, so we've always been very excited about getting new farmers on the line. We also tasted some of the best ingredients, best food products we'd ever tasted on the East Coast or the West Coast, right here in East Central Illinois, and thought people needed to appreciate those more, so we started our Dinners on the Farm series, and I counted them up this year. We've done 159 of them so far, and they're 3 to 4 hour dinners, and people get a lot of time to appreciate the food, the preparation, and the ingredients, and that's what we'd like to continue. About 5,000 individual visits annually to the farm, so we get a lot of exposure. And we're right now producing about 20,000 pounds of goat cheese and gelato. We do have some plans to grow. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about, but this opportunity came along, and it's we started selling at the Urbana Farmers Market in 2005, the year we got licensed, and we've obviously sold to the co-op. We've been at the market ever since. We think this is a fantastic location for what we're going to be proposing. So Katie, if you want to give your background.
My name's Katie Gregg. I've been living in the area for about 5 years, and I work for the Prairie Rivers Network, where I advocate for regenerative agricultural practices and for protecting water quality. I have a master's in agricultural policy and planning and urban environmental planning and policy.
Katie, could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry. Is this better? Oh, there we go. So I was saying, did you hear the first part at all, or should I just start? Okay. In some of my work, I've done a urban farm feasibility analysis when I went to school in Boston area. And I also worked with the Boston Arts Academy, a local high school that was looking to incorporate more local and fresh produce into their school lunch. And I also previously worked at the Fort County Soil and Water Conservation District, where I worked with conventional row crop farmers to help them incorporate conservation practices that helped build soil health and protect water quality on their farm. So I've kind of been working in the ag sphere for a long time, and I've been just an organic gardener, and I'm looking for this opportunity to kind of reach out and not just convince other people to grow food this way, but to kind of walk the walk myself and land access is really a big barrier for beginning farmers if you don't come from a farming family. And so this was a really great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, when we met Katie, it seemed like a natural connection because Leslie and I were both talking about sustainability a lot, like she's been doing. But by getting the farm and setting it up was a way to really practice it. And that's what, and then to demonstrate it to other people, which is the essence of what we're talking about here. I hope this shows up, but I'll read it. So the short version of what we're proposing to do and planning to do is to first do a complete soil characterization. The site was a typical construction site. There's a lot of and since we lived there, we know, some very heavy dump truck activity going in and out of that, and there's a pretty good road right through the edge of this corn crop. And we think that's with Katie working in urban soils, and I did too, this is a classic situation where compaction and loss of topsoil and other things create almost a wasteland. And so the opportunity to, number two there, begin soil regeneration with cover crops. We have goat compost that we produce, and we have usually a little more than we can use. So we'd like to set up some plots with that. And then to produce a wide range of food ingredients from specialty grains, which we think are a really important new crop category for the whole state. And this would be a way for farmers as well as the urban folks to get a look at it. We've talked to Janie's Mill, which is a small flour mill up in Ashcombe, and they'll custom grind the grain that we get, so we can use that flour. And if you've never had fresh flour, you're missing something. So that would be an opportunity to show people what that part of the food system, as well as the dairy part that we do and the vegetable part that Katie would be doing. It's a great opportunity for hands-on experience. We've done lots of field trips and tours and workshops and other things on our farm, and being able to add more space and more crops to the education would be incredibly valuable. And then as soil scientists, we're really anxious to document the changes and improvements in soil quality that are going to occur over the 5 years of the lease, and set it up. All the land will be treated organically. Conceivably in 3 years it could be certified if necessary. All of the land on our farm's been treated organically since we moved there in 2003. So we think that's an important demonstration opportunity as well. Okay. Yeah, and so here's the site. Just very briefly, our farm is just to the north. We rent that 15 acres from Illinois Farm to Table. That's just the 400-022. That's where a lot of our pasture is. We also have a patch of restored prairie there, a couple acres that we graze on. And then the land we're talking about is just to the south of our land. We've used the area in the south, on the lower left corner of the diagram for parking. Although this spring, I have to say, it was a little tough. It was pretty wet. But normally it's a good spot for parking. We have that roughly 6-acre pond there, borrow pit, pond, lake, depending on who you talk to. And then the land we're talking about in particular has these white strips on it. And that's to represent strips of different grain varieties and types and styles. And so we intend first to, because we'll receive access so late in the year that we won't be able to plant anything this winter, but first thing in spring we'll plant summer cover crops and get ideas about the uniformity of the site and start restoring the soil. We'll do the soil testing with that, first soil analysis schemes with that. And then in the fall, we should be able to plant winter grains on those. our neighbor, Scott Ziegler, and Jake, his son, I think they're sixth generation now, I think Jake's sixth, have generously agreed to help us farm that. And so they'll custom farm that with their equipment. They regularly plant wheat as part of their rotation, in addition to corn and beans. So we'll have good access to equipment for planting and management and for harvest. Let's see, is there another?
That's the last slide.
Is that the last one?
Questions?
And then, yeah, there's a prairie. That's a quick run through. Of course, we could talk a long time about this, but we don't want to delay your meeting any longer. But certainly if you have questions now or at any time, don't hesitate to contact us.
Great, thanks a lot. Are there any questions? Yeah, Eric.
Do you anticipate having arrangements with any local restaurants? Or
Yes, we've been talking about pizza demonstrations of various types, but we sell to several restaurants our cheese, and I think that those that are, and bakeries too, for that matter, that are baking, we think this would give them opportunity. Janie's Mill, you should check it out if you haven't, because it's fascinating. They're developing all kinds of different grains, and she said she's working on the Neapolitan pizza crust grain, which I'm kind of anxious to see. But yeah, I think there'll be some real interactive opportunities with businesses, and including restaurants and shops and stores.
Anyone else? Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bill, I'll make a motion if you take it.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we send forward to the full council ordinance number 2019-11-062, an ordinance authorizing the lease of parcels, I'm not going to repeat those pins, to Prairie Fruits Farm LLC with a recommendation for approval.
I'd like to second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dennis. Any discussion on that?
Yeah.
Dennis.
Well, I think it's a real good use of this property. I'd rather see a organic farm there than two-lane, four-lane highway. That may come in the future someday. We don't know. It doesn't seem like likely so much right now. And your business has really prospered, and to give you a lot of credit for that. And it's kind of nice to kind of be participating a little bit and making that further on.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah.
We just wish it had an Urbana address.
I had nothing to do with that.
Eric.
So, for whatever it's worth, if you push out to me and other people who are on social media sometimes, when, which restaurants are actually using
Absolutely.
your produce, I'll just speak for myself. I would certainly preferentially, ask my wife to go out to dinner there, and I'd even suggest to other people that.
Thank you very much. We'll definitely do that. Make sure we do that.
Thanks. We need to vote, right? Did we vote on that? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you out
guys.
there one of these days.
Next is resolution number 2019-11-044R, a resolution authorizing a small cell license agreement with AT&T. Public Works.
All right, good evening. So this resolution is authorizing a license agreement for the installation of small cell technology onto city light pole infrastructure. AT&T has provided plans for 6 locations, which are included in the exhibit to this license agreement. The Public Works Department and Building Safety Divisions have each had a partner reviewing the plans to ensure the safe and proper installation onto the city light poles and the on-the-ground installation as well. The agreement includes a permitting fee of $2,100 and then an annual fee of $1,200 to be paid by AT&T. And then Chris Warwick and Connie Lambier are here to provide some more information on what small cell technology is.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. My name is Chris Warwick. I'm the Director of External Affairs for AT&T. I have with me.
I'm Connie Lamberis. I'm a project manager with AT&T. So I've been working with, previously with Brad, and I've been working with the city of Urbana for about a year and a half on the small cell agreement and the drawings for the permit applications that we've submitted. And we signed a lease with the city of Champaign, Springfield, and the University of Illinois in Champaign for small cell deployment. And we're anxious and very interested in deploying small cells here in Urbana. And the purpose of it, of the small cells, is to offload the macro sites that we currently have, as they're experiencing a high volume of traffic from multiple users, and as more and more people stream data and post videos and use for social media and watch TV and movies on their phones, the need for data has increased. And so the small cells with a low output are lower to the ground and closer to where people are in vehicles. And in the future, will hopefully help with connected cars and everything else, FirstNet, E911.
Different Internet of Things.
Mm-hmm. So you can see how the data has increased since 2007 with the launch of the iPhone.
So a little bit of a difference between the two types of things you look at. A macro cell, which is our normal towers. Those are anywhere from 75 to 250 feet with a coverage from half a mile up to 8 miles, depending on the radius or topography. Our current small cells that are 4G LTE capable, they use the same frequencies, but it's at a lower output for the small cells. So they have a height usually between 30 and 60 feet. These particular ones would be within accordance with the state law, so they'd be less than 45 feet, which is the height of some of the poles that are in question that we're looking to install these on, and they would have a radius of approximately 1,200 feet or a little less than a quarter of a mile. So what are the small cells? What are we looking to do with them? So we're looking to place small cells in areas where there are large congregations of people or congregation points. So if you're at a restaurant, a shopping area, shopping district, places on campus where students are on their phones for a large amount of times and they're static in certain areas, that creates a draw on the network. By placing these small cells, we'll be able to handle that draw from the network, offload it to the small cells, and by taking roughly 200 users off of the macro network and placing them on the small cell network, that will strengthen the macro network, the towers, because there's 200 per se spots that would be available. This drawing right here, this diagram, you can see on a light pole, you've got the antenna on the top and the radios just below that. These will again help with Internet of Things, connectivity, people will see faster download speeds, and also a strengthening of the network.
Oh, I went too far. You know how to get it back?
So these are some small cell deployments, just a couple examples that we have throughout the state of Illinois. The picture in the top left corner is a location in Chicago. You can see the antenna is on the top with the shroud and the radios that actually do the connection of the network that are just below the parking deck structure that you see there. Below that, there's another one that's on a wooden pole. So if there's an existing wooden pole in the area, we try to match the poles that are in the area and to use different techniques to make sure that they match with their environment. Again, the one to the right of it, there was a row of wooden poles, so we installed it on another wooden pole. All of the ones that we're going to look to do in Urbana are on metal poles, metal light poles, so we'll be putting up another metal light pole or one that is very similar to it to match the background and to make sure that it looks very similar. The one in the lower right-hand corner, it's a lower luminaire or light structure, and then we have a longer pole going up to the antenna on the top. So again, why do we pick the 6 locations that we did? Making sure that we can cover for poor signal quality or strength. These are moderate to heavy data locations. And again, that these C-RAN devices, as they're known in the industry, also small cells, they're going to provide a stronger base of coverage in a condensed area. That's important in the university, specifically the university students. They want to see faster connections. They want to have the best coverage possible. This is going to offer this. We've got one location that's on Green Street that's near the university, near the physics building. We drove by there tonight. There was probably 30 or 40 students that were sitting in that lounge right in that one area, and they're probably all on their phones, either studying, looking up information, or just enjoying entertainment. Most people these days are carrying their entertainment in their pocket on their devices. So just a couple of examples here from the drawings. We have 402 West Springfield Avenue, West Green Street, and South Vine Street. All 3 of these locations, we would keep the luminaire height at its current height, and then we would have an extension pole on there. You can see towards the top that kind of black box right there. That's where the radios are, and then the antenna on top, and that's at a height of 38 feet. The next one is on South Goodwin. We would keep the existing banner and signage, and then we would have a shroud for the radios, and we would just attach the radios and the antenna to the existing light pole that is there. Or actually, we would replace it with a stronger pole for strength and viability of the pole. Another location on South Lincoln. This is down towards Jimmy John's in that area. Number of restaurants that are in that area, students congregating in that point, brings a draw on the network. We're hoping to offload that with these small cells. And then one last final location, 1614 North Lincoln. This is kind of near Sportland. They have the One Apartments. Again, people that are on their phones or on their devices shopping, and I believe there's also a restaurant in that area. We would use the existing pole height and then have the antenna and the radios on there as well. And just as Connie had pointed out, we'd worked with Brad when he was here, and we've been working with Justin to answer any staff questions to make sure that it's going to suit the aesthetics of the community, and then also to meet the needs of the community and the standards that you have. Any questions?
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions? Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to know, the one on Lincoln, on North Lincoln, that's in front of the North Lincoln apartment buildings? Is that where-
It's technically on the other side of the street.
It's
Just
where the ATB, whatever the little motorcycle place is?
It's just north of, it's the next building up. There's a
Okay.
blue building with white writing. I'm trying to think, I think it's a rental place, perhaps.
Okay.
It's right there. So it's just half a block north of that intersection. Just, there's the Sportland, the parking lot, the next building, and
Right.
you're right in front of that building.
Okay. So, okay, I think I know where you're talking about. I'm just trying to visualize.
Oh, sure.
Me and the mayor going, where exactly is it? Okay, so.
Yeah, but it's across the street from the one apartments. And then again, that quarter mile would give
All of
coverage
that
in
area will be covered, or?
A quarter mile from that radius would be covered.
Excellent.
With just a small cell. So again, though, the traffic on those items would go over the small cells. They're all fiber fed. Go back to the central office and then, disperse out into the network. So the tower that's in that area is then going to be alleviated by the number of people that are on that small cell.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Dennis.
Yeah, you might have just answered it. I don't know, but so I was wondering if is the data that's coming to these points, your cell radio, you said, and your shrouded speaker?
Sure. So on some of the
Is-
locations,
oh,
depending,
antenna,
yeah,
the antenna.
depending on the height, yeah, there's the radios. The one that's a little bit lower to the ground, we place a shroud around it to protect the equipment.
Oh.
Just keep it safe, not really so much from the elements, but from anybody that might be interested in climbing a pole that, sometimes university students like to climb poles later at night and check out things that are on top of on light poles. So it's kind of to protect the equipment, but also to stealth it a little bit too, so to keep it concealed.
So my question was that is the data that's coming to them, is that hardwired to it? You said fiber connection, but I was wondering if it was, the signal was coming from towers and just being transmitted by these lower towers, like a jump?
No, it's not. They'll have their own feed. So much like our larger towers have a feedback into our network, these small cells will have a feedback into the network. So the people that are in that radius.
But the feeds are not like physical; they're waves. Is that correct? Or
Right. Yeah.
It's not fiber. You're not like laying fiber down to make these connections.
The poles will be fiber connected
They will
to
be
our
fiber.
network. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then there would be the smaller radios. Then
Transmitting.
transmitting
I get- all right.
the microwave signal. Yeah.
Okay.
the signals.
So then the other question is, then as things evolve here or something like that, do you imagine that you'll be like wanting to perhaps put more up as well, as maybe populations or need
Yes.
services?
Yes, as we would probably want to do more. Our engineers are constantly evaluating our network to see where there's certain hotspots, and we try to alleviate those hotspots. So either you can put up a larger tower, which is difficult to do given some of the zoning laws and things like that,
Right.
and they're just not as they're not as attractive as folks think they are. But we would look to have these in probably more spots, but in targeted locations. I could probably see behind us here at the Lincoln Mall, maybe along I'm trying to think of the street.
Main
back over-
Street?
Main Street over here, where you have a large amount of people. Probably maybe also along University might be another spot,
Right.
Near the hospital. There's a number of chain restaurants that are right there, plus you've got Walgreens. I don't know about you, but my wife will ask me to pick up mustard, and I don't know which mustard to pick up, so
I
will
see those
FaceTime her.
conversations in the
Yes, I will
dumbfounded shoppers.
Yeah,
that
well,
are- okay.
I'll use FaceTime.
Right.
I'll use the network and say, is this the mustard you want? And she says,
Yeah.
yes.
So, and so far, you're using existing poles, you're putting sometimes extensions on the top of a pole, but you're basically not putting in brand-new poles that are new to the area, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And what we do is sometimes we will put in a different pole that might be thicker and stronger to carry the weight of the equipment, but it would be in that same location, so we're not setting a pole next to an existing.
So far, we're not seeing any on what you would call the historic downtown style of poles?
No, if that suits me correct, is that where there's like the round
Yes.
light at the top? Those are too short.
Okay.
So those don't qualify. So for those, we might look at some other options. We also will match the pole as well. So there are some decorative poles. Like in the city of Springfield, in their downtown, they have taller poles,
Yeah.
but they're decorative. So we're going to match that decorative pole.
Okay, well, I appreciate that consideration.
Yeah.
Other questions, Eric?
So a story that you might like to have in your arsenal is that when the Eiffel Tower was first put up for this
yeah.
grand event, people who were concerned about the Paris skyline thought it was incredibly ugly. And the people who put it up had to promise to tear it down after a certain period. But once that period was up, they were radio had taken off, and they were broadcasting so much radio from the top of the Eiffel Tower that they decided not to take it down. And of course, now it's considered an architectural triumph. So, in case that helps you in the pole battles that you continually have, you're welcome to that story.
Am I welcome to use your license? Yes, I mean, again, with the poles, we want to blend them in, camouflage, make it, fit in. So not only to protect the assets, but just to protect the visual integrity in the area.
And we're running into that in the city of Chicago, where there's historic areas. And we actually have an engineering company that's coming up with decorative poles, several different designs for those scenarios.
Good for you.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. I noticed there are a couple on Lincoln and on various streets. Sometimes we'll have public works projects coming up when we redo the streets or something. And I noticed in some of the very detailed diagrams that I'm sure none of us paid a lot of attention to, but it was nice to be able to look at them. They have pretty intense foundations, 10 feet deep, 3 feet around, concrete stuff. Is that common? Is that what all of our light poles have, or is this extra heavy duty for extra weight, or?
No, the light pole foundations are largely standard details without getting too, I haven't reviewed exactly how they compare, but the foundations themselves are typically very deep just because you've got so much above ground, and that can provide a lot of leverage and with high winds. And so we would expect these, or what's in here, to look like that.
So if we ended up needing that space for a lane or something, it would be up to us to shift it and move it once it's installed? Or would they still have responsibility for paying for some of it if it needed to be moved?
I might have to get back to you on
Okay,
that.
we have a week to think about it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We would move them as necessary if you had a public works project. I know sometimes if you widen, lanes and things like that, we would work to reset a pole if necessary.
Okay, and do you lease capacity to other carriers, or is it all AT&T?
This would be specific to AT&T customers.
Okay, so we might get other carriers coming in wanting to do similar
Yes.
things.
And we also own Cricket as well, which is a prepaid brand, so it would be for prepaid customers as well. They'd be able to benefit from that.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the fiber network. We have UC2B, which is like several fiber rings throughout town. Do you use any of that, or you have all your own fiber in separate conduit?
Yeah, we have been separate conduit. We've been the incumbent in the area since the Illinois Bell telephone days, so we have a vast fiber network in the city as well.
Okay. Nope, those are my questions. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, is there a motion?
I can do this. I move Resolution 2019-11-044R, a resolution authorizing a small cell license agreement with AT&T to be forwarded to City Council with approval.
Second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? No discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. It's forwarded to council for next week. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next, we have resolution number 2019-11-045R, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Champaign County Regional Planning Commission for media production services. UPTV, Jason.
Good evening, Council. Before you, you have a resolution concerning media production services, an intergovernmental agreement with the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. This is the exact agreement that you had approved with 4 other entities back at the start of September. It's just recovering any costs that the city incurs while we produce videos of those meetings. Happy to answer any questions.
Dennis.
Yeah. So basically, this is kind of like a codicil that allows us to bill for the services. Is that kind of what this is?
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're providing the services now, so we're just wanting to be able to pay for them. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll make a motion that we move resolution 2019-11-045R, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Champaign County Regional Planning Commission for media production services to the City Council with approval.
Second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? Eric?
Am I looking at the wrong document? I'm seeing 044R.
That was the small cell license agreement, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Any other discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to forward resolution to City Council with recommendation for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is resolution number 2019-11-046R, a resolution estimating the tax levy for fiscal year 2019-2020. Finance, Elizabeth.
So I'm going to say that Don Ho actually did the work on the tax levy this year and will follow this through the whole process. However, somehow we had one oversight in the memo, which is we forgot to put his name on it, so that wasn't obvious. So I want to give credit where credit is due, and Don's going to talk you through this.
So it's that time of the year again, so let's buckle up and get ready for the ride. So first of all, I'm gonna quickly run through some property tax basics. I know you guys are all familiar with this, but we may have citizens watching on TV that that might not understand all of this. So, oops. So in the state of Illinois, properties are assessed at 1/3 of fair market value, and that's equalized assessed valuation, or EAV. Exemption may be applied to reduce taxing value, and the most common one is the $6,000 exemption for owner-occupied properties. So the taxing value is the assessed value less the exemptions. So for example, a $50,000 home is assessed at 1/3 of market value, or $50,000. If this home is owner-occupied, the owner-occupied exemption reduces the taxing value by $6,000 to $44,000. And that $44,000 is the amount used to calculate the property tax bill. So each taxing district levies their own taxes, and the county calculates the total tax rate for a particular property by adding tax rates for all of the individual taxing districts applicable to that property. So for most properties in Urbana, the city's property taxes are about 13% of the total. And taxes levied in 2019 will be extended in 2020, and we will generally receive the money in May and September. So this slide shows the breakdown of taxes for most properties in Urbana. As you can see, the school district portion in purple here is more than half of the property tax in Urbana at 55%. Next, we have the city at 13%, the Park District 12%, county at 8%, Parkland at 5%, and all the other at 7%. And all others includes the Forest Preserve, Cunningham Township, MTD, and Public Health. This distribution will certainly change in 2019 levy, but not significantly. So for the 2019 tax levy, the mayor recommends maintaining the current $1.3499 tax rate, whether or not hospital properties are included. Staff expect total assessment will increase by about 3%. However, if OSF properties had not been included in the 2018 levy, the increase would have been 5.5%, and this is the highest increase we have seen in a single year since the Great Recession. If hospital properties are included in 2019, which is very unlikely, the city's EAV would increase by about 25%. And the following chart shows the trend in assessment over the past 11 years. So we're looking at the total EAV for 11 years, and I've highlighted hospital properties included for 2018 and 2019. The blue portion in 2018 represented OSF properties that were initially included in the tax rolls, but later got taken out. And the blue portion in 2019 illustrated the additional EAV that could result from including hospital properties on the tax roll this year. So in terms of our ability to raise revenue at a stable tax rate, we are for the first time at the highest EAV in the past 11 years, and this is due to some significant increases in commercial property assessments in 2019. So if we ignore the portion related to hospital properties in 2019, we can see that we are a bit above the 2010 peak of $596 million in EAV, and we expect our EAV this year to be about $601 million, which is about 2.3% higher than in 2010. So while it seems very unlikely, there is a possibility that hospital properties could be included in the final EAV on which the levy extension will be based. That would result in an increase of $149 million in EAV. Because of that possibility, we will levy a much higher amount and then abate or reduce the levy depending upon whether that occurs or not. Staff does not recommend reducing the tax rate if hospital properties are added to the tax rolls because of uncertainty about whether those taxes would be paid, or if paid, whether they would be refunded. If we do receive those taxes, we would place them in the reserve fund, and it would not be spent until there's a final decision on the property tax issue. So for example, in the 2018 levy, the extension was based on an EAV that included OSF properties that were later removed from the tax rolls. So the abatement reduced the tax rate by about 0.5%, and that resulted in a lower tax rate for the city. However, the OSF properties will never be received by the city, resulting in a shortfall of over $188,000 in the general fund. So focusing on the city portion of the property tax bill, you can see that this chart shows the cost to homeowners with properties valued between $100,000 and $250,000. One thing to note here is that these calculations include the owner-occupied exemption. And again, this is just the city portion of the property tax bill. And according to the latest data from the Census Bureau, the 2017 median home value in Urbana was about $448,000.
Did you say 148 or 440?
Oh, $148,000. Yeah. What did I say?
You said 448,000.
I'm living in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah. My bad.
We can only wish.
Yeah.
Wow, Wayne went crazy.
That would have been nice. So let's get more specific about the city's tax levy. There are 4 purposes for which the city levy taxes. First, we have police pensions. Second, we have fire pensions. Third, library. Fourth, we have corporate purposes, and this is the part that goes to the general fund and to pay for basic city services such as police protection. All right, so let's talk about the specific purposes for which we will levy. First, we have the library, and we know that the library is very dependent on property tax revenue, which makes up 85% of their recurring revenues in the library general fund. The proposed levy of $3,483,000 for the library is based on the budget review by the City Council for fiscal year 20. This will provide necessary revenue to support that budget. This is an increase of about $211,000, a 6.44% increase from the current tax levy. Then we have police and fire pensions on the next largest share of the levy at about $2,850,000. And this number is based on the funding policy that was approved by City Council in May of 2018. And our goal is to be 100% funded in 20 years. And this year, the second year of a 5-year transition to a higher level of pension funding. And this is a $327,000 increase from the 2018 tax levy, which is expected. And the last one, we have the corporate levy, and this portion of the tax levy pays for general fund expenditures, such as police protection, and this is the portion of the levy that is adjusted to maintain a stable tax rate. So based on maintaining the same tax rate, this portion will decrease by about $300,000 or 14.4%, which is consistent with the fiscal year 20 financial forecast. A decrease was anticipated in light of increased pension and library funding and modest growth in property values. Now let's look at the components of the tax levy over time. So we have here purple is the library, green is pensions, and blue is the city's portion. So as you can see, library portion has been increasing slowly over time. And then from 2013 to 2015, the pension levies decreased and the city's portion increased. And this is the period where pension funding was reduced to the minimum required by state law. And beginning in 2016, the pension levy started increasing even at the minimum amount, and the corporate levy decreased as a result, as you can see, the difference between 2016 and 2017. 2018 was the first year, and 2019 is the second year of the 5-year transition plan to a higher level of pension funding. So because of increased levy for pensions and the library over the last few years, the city's portion has been decreasing. One thing to note here is that the right column, the 2019 column, shows the 2019 levy without hospital properties included. So in order to complete the tax levy process, we need City Council to adopt the estimated levy next week. Then we will advertise regarding the levy on November 30th, and we will hold a public hearing on December 9th. The final tax levy will be brought to council on December 16th for approval. We are not planning to bring this back to committee on December 9th unless City Council requests that. Elizabeth and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Don or Elizabeth? I have a couple if nobody else does. They've been talking about some pension changes at the state level, pooling investments and things like that. Would that affect any of our funding as far as we still control how much we put in and how much we have?
Right. I mean, so essentially, the investments would be pooled, but we still own our piece of the pie. So given our the city's funding policy, I assume we would continue to follow that policy and ramp up our funding with the 20-year time horizon. So.
Okay. And then I think that Wayne said that a lot of the commercial properties were reassessed and were quite a bit higher this year, and that's probably part of the increase we see. He also said there's a lot of people contesting those, so what happens if they're successful in contesting? Will we come up short like last year with the hospital?
So yes, correct. There was I think it was an 18 or 19% increase for commercial properties in the city, and there have been a number of complaints to the Board of Review seeking relief from that. But as you will see, the estimated levy is actually 30-some% higher than the current levy. So we're going with that really big number to make sure we can capture that revenue. And then when we approve the final tax levy, we'll have, in that packet, we'll have a resolution that directs the county clerk to reduce our tax rate down to $1.34.99. So at the end of the process, they'll take care of that for us.
So those if they contest those, that'll be all resolved by that point?
Yes, it should be.
Okay, they shouldn't, okay. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jared.
Neighboring communities, is everybody else doing much the same?
When you say doing much the same.
As far as keeping their rate the same. I mean,
Yeah.
I know we have this, like, we're doing the overestimation thing.
Yeah,
but in general, if we didn't have that, we'd be staying consistent with what 2018 was.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that Champagne's plan is to maintain their rate at $1.31.52, which is ultimately our goal when we're able to do that.
But tax cap communities probably wouldn't do that. They're still going for the highest they can. I mean,
I have generally found that to be the case, that governments subject to tax caps will
yeah.
push
So
it to
by
the
us not having
limit.
tax caps, we keep our rates steady, pretty much.
I suppose
That's the
you
way
could
it's
look
worked
at it
out.
that way. I would say it's our policy to keep a steady rate, so.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion then?
I'll make the motion. I'll move resolution number 2019-11-046R, resolution estimating the tax levy for fiscal year 1920 be forwarded to the full council with recommendation for approval.
Second.
Is it moved by Jared and seconded by Eric? Okay. Any discussion on that? Not? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have resolution number 2019-11-063. Oh, sorry, this is an ordinance. Ordinance number 2019-11-063, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code Chapter 22, Article 7, Section 22-91A, amendment to the food and beverage tax ordinance. We'll have the city staff presentation and then public input after that.
Good.
Hi, I'm Chris Francisco, the Financial Services Manager. Tonight, I'm presenting an ordinance to increase the food and beverage tax from 1.5% to 2%. This tax applies to food and beverages prepared for immediate consumption. Increasing the food and beverage tax is part of a combination of revenue increases recommended by the mayor to produce a balanced budget without further reductions to city staffing and services. An increase to the food and beverage tax would not affect the cost of essential goods and services, and the cost to implement the increase would be minimal compared to implementing a new tax. Both residents and non-residents who purchase food from restaurants in Urbana would pay the tax, which amounts to an additional 12 cents on a $25 purchase. At 2%, Urbana's food and beverage tax will be lower than Champagne's food and beverage tax, which increases to 2.5% in January. If approved, the increase is expected to generate an estimated $400,000 in the general fund annually, and the increase will become effective on February 1st, 2020. We did invite businesses affected by this increase to tonight's meeting, and they also were invited to comment via email. I received one email comment, and that is before you tonight. So we can. Oh, and we also did have a couple phone calls, just with general questions about forms and whether they had to attend the meeting tonight. So that's on the reverse side of that. So we can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Doesn't look like it. Okay, we'll have some public input. I have two cards. One is Matt Riggs.
Good evening, everybody. That was really timely that we got to see the property tax stuff because I know it is a tough job, and no city has the luxury of having an excess of funds. I did feel that it was my responsibility as a business owner, though, to kind of come here and present to you the other side of a tax increase. You know, this isn't the first one. Actually, this is the third in less than 3 years that has targeted the core of our business, which is food and beverage and alcohol. In 2018, food and beverage tax went from 1 to 1.5. Earlier this year, packaged alcohol went from 1 to 3. And now we're proposing taking food and beverage from 1.5 up to 2. Just to put it in black and white terms, that's taking nearly $10,000 a year in additional dollars from our bottom line and sending it to the city. I love paying taxes. I'm proud to pay taxes, and I really want to see a balanced budget. And I salute you guys in an effort to do exactly that hard job of balancing the budget. But I wanted to kind of put out there that, it is extremely painful when new cost ramps up on a young business. So that $10,000 is not, our total tax burden, but that's since we opened additional tax. And I just wanted to make that point that it's felt, and we have great plans for that money. Actually, A&R Mechanical, an Urbana company, is going to come and put a new HVAC unit on our roof next week. That'll cover about less than half of what we need to spend to do that improvement. Our investment in solar, we've done a lot of things. We're not just like stockpiling cash and not doing anything with it. We're investing that back into our community. Employment, we're adding full-time employees. We've added 2 this year. We're going to add another one in the first of the year. Half of our company works in the city of Urbana, lives here too. So anyway, I just wanted to voice my concern there and really urge you, what's the future plan? Are we going to go 4 for 4 or 5 for 5? And I don't mean that in a sarcastic manner. I mean, help me plan. Where's this thing going to end up at in order for us to balance the city's budget? What is my ultimate tax rate going to be? And I hope that it doesn't adjust all the time, because that makes it tough for us to plan financially. I don't want to just come out here and bring a problem without a solution. I think that one way that the city can rein in spending a little bit is to reduce the TIF program. I've done a limited amount of research on it, and I think the results of TIF are questionable nationwide. When I look at the city's own report, in 2016 there was a review of TIF businesses that had opened between 2006 and 2012. And in 2016, it was reported that of the $237,000 that was spent during that period, only 26% of the businesses that received funds were still open in 2016. And so, the cap was 10 years old as a business, but some of those up to 2012, that's only a 4-year-old business. I would say that's not a good batting average. And I would say that I would encourage the free market to work. Business people should be taking those risks. I think that we have plenty of banks in town that should take those risks. I really want to pay taxes to pay for roads and police and fire and schools. I don't want to pay taxes to subsidize other businesses' business risk. I think we're a good example of a business that was able to move into a building that was a little bit blighted, had been vacant for 3 years, broken into, all the copper cut out. We didn't need an incentive to do that. That's what business should do. We should bring value to you guys, but I'm urging you to maybe not take that value and redistribute it. Use it for our worthwhile needs that need to be fully funded. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, to get discussion going, we need a motion. Oh, sorry, there's another card. Tom Delaney? Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Tom Delaney. I'm an Urbana resident. Feel like I'm a little before a congressional session today. I haven't appeared before the council before, but I'm also concerned with respect to the increase in the sales tax, because I think all of the members of this council want to make Urbana a viable business environment. And in that respect, as a resident, I'm opposed to any actions that might negatively impact the business opportunities in Urbana. I think you heard a little bit from Matt Riggs, and I have to admit that I do attend his establishment, so I might be a little bit biased there. But I'm concerned about, I think our competition, the competition to me for Urbana in terms of business environment is Champaign. I'll be quite blank. I think you you know, it's not a zero-sum game. We can each do okay. But I think what we can't afford to do is to have Urbana do worse. I think we need to maintain the businesses that we currently have. I think we need to grow that business. I would like to see us attract a greater portion of clientele and traffic to the downtown Urbana area especially, but to Urbana generally. I've seen too many businesses come into Urbana and set up operations. Most of these have been food and beverage operations, actually. And, you know, for whatever reasons, they go out of business, and we lose another source of revenue. We lose employees that are hired by our employers here, and they have to go elsewhere. You know, with the tax imposed on these businesses, what are they supposed to do? You know, they can just impose the tax on their bills and have the people pay it, and I guess people look, you know, well, it's the same price whether we go to Urbana or Champaign, or they can try and keep prices the same to maintain clientele and keep competitive, and they can reduce their margins, which to the extent that they do that, it hurts their ongoing business operations and may eventually cause them to fail. You know, one of the places, I live on Amber Lane, so I'm fairly close to Addie's out in Stone Creek. And Stone Creek has, you know, a certain amount of affluence out there, but I have to admit that restaurant out there, you know, their clientele is not large during the week. If, you know, this, I'm actually concerned if this tax goes into place, you know, and there's other restaurant choices available, you know, are people going to say, well, go to Addie's, or we can, you know, go down to downtown Champaign and eat down there, go down to Farron's, or go down to some of the new restaurants down in downtown Champaign. So I just, I would ask that the council consider, and I guess Matt had suggested one option, but there may be other opportunities to increase revenue sources without imposing additional taxes on food and beverage, which I think are going to, over time, have a detrimental impact on the types of businesses that I think would be most viable in terms of attracting clientele to the Urbana city. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, is there a motion? Could somebody make a motion?
I'll move adoption of the ordinance increasing food and beverage, or recommending to the full council adoption of the ordinance increasing food and beverage tax.
A second.
Okay, moved by Eric, seconded by Sharice, to forward the ordinance to City Council with recommendation for approval. Is there any discussion? Yeah, Dennis.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Chris if you'd answered this one. So we have a chart on our second page of our memos from staff showing the current food and beverage tax rates for different cities, and then I guess the proposed total food and back tax that would be implemented. And I see that Champaign's effective food and tax is 2.5%, and their total is 11.5%. But Urbana's proposed is only 2%, and the total would be only 11%, so it's still 0.5% lower than Champaign's rate. Is that correct? Am I getting this right?
Yeah, that is correct. Champagne's will be 0.5% higher than Urbana's.
Mm-hmm. So I understand that we're having a conversation about, trying to match or not exceed our neighbors' tax rates. So it looks like, according to this chart that we're looking at, while it has gone up, so has the one in Champaign, and they're basically, we're still basically having a lower tax rate for the same objects, foods and beverages.
That's correct.
In our city.
That's
So we're
correct.
not overdoing it, we're still underdoing it. And then I would agree with Tom, that I've seen some of our business startup checks go for potential new entrepreneur events here in the city. And those businesses have, maybe lasted a year and then failed away, gone away. And each of those startup checks have required that the owners take a class with the Small Business Association, and come up with a plan that they submit to the city before they're given a startup check of $1,000 as part of our economic development program. And I've seen some checks passed to people who I thought, well, I don't think these people will ever be here for 1 year, but yet we still do it. I'm not sure that's quite what you're aiming at as far as like talking about the TIF district supporting businesses. I think that the TIF district is like extremely vital to achieve some of the long-term goals of improving the community. The TIF district helped create the current parts of the Boneyard Creek improvements, beautification projects, which is between Race Street and Broadway. And without the TIF district being substantially helping with that plan and improving the Boneyard Creek there, we wouldn't have that amenity. Now, I don't think the amenity has been discovered or is used as much as I'd like to see it. And I really like to see the rest of the other 4 sections of that plan come to fruition and be actually completed. We don't see any plans in the future for like achieving it, but at least it's a goal that we have. And heck, I'd like to see, the Boneyard Creek improved all the way down to the University of Illinois, and make it a connective path that would really add value to this community as a walking path between the students at the university and our downtown. Especially when we find that probably like 50% of the students who are attending the U of I have yet to come to discover what downtown Urbana looks like, which to me is like unbelievable, because when I was in college, I used to walk around everywhere, and I went miles walking around at night looking at things. But it's one of the challenges that we're trying to overcome. And so I'm hearing what you're saying, but I probably will support this at this time.
Other discussion? Jared?
Just to go over this, not in excruciating further detail, but members of the public may not have been in on our discussions. I know that all of us talked in depth with our city administrator and our mayor about other options that we had considered to get the city back to level. And I was wondering, Carol, if you might tell folks a little bit more about the other things we'd consider besides doing something that was directly affecting businesses, and why we landed on this as opposed to some of the other options, one of which we're going to come up with immediately after this, another tax.
Maybe Elizabeth could help me out here with some of the things that we considered, but we're looking at revenue sources that will not make us, we don't think, uncompetitive, but maybe still had some capacity to bear, to bear some increases. We're trying to do that across sectors, and things at least at this juncture that are fairly easy to implement. I mean, we have there's some other options that we could pursue, but they're more complicated to set up a structure to even implement the tax or fee structure or whatever it might be. And, the alternative, if we can't come up with enough revenue alternatives, is that we would have to continue to make reductions, and that was extremely difficult last year. We think with cannabis and the opportunity to tax the, the Airbnb type facilitators, we think that we'll be able to get to where we need to be this year without any further substantial reductions. I don't know, did you want to offer, Elizabeth, some of the things that maybe we thought were a little more complicated?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't bring that list with me, and I don't have it all in my head. We basically, at some point, I had a list of kind of like every option that was available to us, but some of them were just clearly unacceptable. For example, we could increase our home rule sales tax, but that would put us at a competitive disadvantage with our neighbor on the other side of Wright Street here. I mean, there are, as Carol mentioned, the administrative burden to implement was a consideration. So if we create a whole new tax, but we also need another full-time person in finance to manage that or something, then, that's a little, we're, kind of losing off the top from any new revenue that we receive. So I'd be happy to get you that information, but it's probably been months since I looked at that. Yeah.
Mayor Marlin.
And just to add to those comments, I could provide some context for the public. As you know, over the last 2.5 years, we have systematically attacked our structural budget deficit. We started out in a $2.5 million hole. And so over the past 2 years, we've focused mainly on spending reductions. We've reorganized departments. We've reduced staffing. We have reduced spending across the board at a high level and down to the point where we looked at where we get our business cards, and each box of, we changed business card vendors and saved a few dollars on each box of business cards. We've have focused for the first 2.5 years on spending reductions, and I think that was our responsibility to look at every single way we could save money and be more efficient. We've also become more efficient in many ways with online services, implementing our financial system entirely online and some other online services that allow us to be more efficient. And we're always constantly looking for ways to be more efficient and effective and good stewards of the public funds. The goal, what we're looking at here with the combination of the 3 tax increases that we're considering or have considered this year, we should be able to close the projected gap of about $875,000 for the next fiscal year. And if things go as planned, I think we will have eliminated our structural deficit at the end of fiscal year 2021. That's the goal, which is a remarkable accomplishment considering where we started. And it's been the result of incredibly hard work by staff, some very, very difficult decisions that we've all made, and some politically courageous decisions that you have made. And so that's where we are here and why we've made the recommendations that we've made. But we will be in a much stronger financial position at the end of fiscal year 2021, and again, with the goal of getting ourselves on a firm financial footing. And it's been incredibly difficult, but we're closing in on our goal. So,
Eric.
So I guess one of the things that entered into our thinking, I tried to do a little reading up on elasticity, demand elasticity based on price. And it looks to me as though the 0.5% increase to consumer of the cost of food and beverage consumed on premises is not going to be very significant. And I don't know this for sure, but I think that was the staff estimate of the increased revenue based on sort of a zero estimate, impact on demand, or did you factor in some small impact?
No, we assumed there would be no impact on demand.
Okay, so you're probably a few tenths of a % off based on what I've been reading. But you raised the question of TIF, and that's a good question, because If you're in private business, you stay up late at night worrying about your decisions. In the public sector, we should stay up late at night worrying about TIF decisions because we're, on behalf of the public, we're assuming some of the risk of the business decisions of the people we're attracting. And I would totally renounce TIF if Champaign did. But we are competing with them for, you know, the kind of goals that TIF embodies. I wish none of us did it. But if your closest competitor, your closest competitive municipality is doing it, to me, I felt as though there wasn't a choice.
Any other discussion? Okay, Jared.
I just add that I hear strongly what Matt is saying, and I know that I've spoken with a couple other owners who are in his same light. While they did not submit comments to the city, they definitely have made comments to me personally about our continual beating up on small margin food and beverage businesses, and especially bars in particular, which this will absolutely affect. And a lot of people do have models that allow them to absorb it more easily, but a lot of people do run their business the way that the rigs do and make it extremely easy for consumers to come in and pay a round dollar amount for a drink, and it's a really great way to run things for as a business. It makes everything simple. You add all your numbers up. But we hear that, and I don't know, I will probably vote against this time because 3 in 3 years is probably a lot, and I don't know that we would ever even consider reducing it. If we set it there, it's not like it's ever going to come back down. The only way it goes is back up. But I'm still washing on this, and I'd like to hear more comments from other council members.
Yes, Sharice.
Is there a cap on food and beverage taxes and is there a cap there?
You mean, is there a statutory cap? Does
Yeah, is
state
there
law
something
limit
like
us
you
to what we
can't
can
go
do?
above a particular percentage?
You know, I haven't had to think about this recently. If there is, we're not anywhere near it.
Okay.
Yeah, Mayor Marlin.
Just to your point about the impact on bars, one of the things as we revise our liquor code, we'll also be taking a look at the fees. And I do recognize that the liquor license fee for Class A license holders, which are the bars, is high. So that's one of the reasons we haven't increased those fees for 3 years now. And we'll also be looking at the actual amount. So there may be some relief there as well.
That's good to know. We haven't seen the proposal yet for the liquor license stuff, so that's coming to us soon as well, and hopefully we'll get more input on that. Bill, I haven't heard you say anything on this. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I usually, when I'm chair, I kind of wait till the end. But I think, I definitely feel the pain from people that have flat prices, and people that charge $5 a beer, $4 a beer. I think your growlers are a little underpriced. You could probably get away with raising that a little bit. So yeah, I'm not really sure how I'm going to vote on this next week. If it gets, I guess it'll get there in some form for next week. I do think I don't think TIF is actually our worst economic program. I think our enterprise zones could probably use some overhaul that would save money. I don't remember how much of the new, how much of the enterprise zone cost or whatever foregone taxes relate to some multifamily housing developments that didn't need the incentive. we refer to that as successful because it's a program that's being used, but if something doesn't need to be incentivized and it's being used, then that's not successful. That's just lost revenue for both us and for the school district. And I've brought that up earlier this year, but I think we need to make changes in that and how it's enforced. So yeah, I'm kind of with you, Jared. I think we've raised enough taxes on food and beverage, but it is probably one of the least regressive taxes we have. It is directly related to spending, usually on more luxury type items. Although fast food's in there too, and a lot of people that don't make a lot of money eat fast food. So we're really hitting everybody. I think Champaign-Urbana kind of play leapfrog sometimes with their food and beverage taxes. They raise theirs, and then we raise ours, and vice versa. So we're kind of in that stage now. It probably wouldn't be here. That's if they hadn't raised theirs 2%. If they'd raised theirs 1%, I think there'd be a lot less impetus for us to raise ours. Anyone else? Do you have your hand up?
I did.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
I understand this is a difficult decision. I also want to remind folks that if this is not passed, you'll be looking at finding $400,000 in cuts coming up in the next year. And we're talking about reductions in programs and services and people probably. So that is our choice this year. We're trying extremely hard to increase our growth, our tax base, economic development in the city, while balancing, which we understand completely, the needs of the businesses. But we are at the point now where that's the choice here.
Okay, could we have a motion on the floor since we are, we did have, that's right. We have a motion and we have a second, right? Okay, Eric and Sharice.
I think there's request public for more input.
Oh, sure, go ahead, Matt.
So I would just say if this needs to go through, we understand, but it might be something of value to maybe put out there to the business community. Because again, I'm not the only one, and I'm hoping that I'm not getting blowback from folks saying, "Oh, Riggs doesn't want to pay taxes." No, that's not the case at all. We really want to. We just want it to be, we want to be able to plan for it. So all the other bars and restaurants that we sell to, I think they would also appreciate that if you guys could maybe tie into this, hey, our target, our goal is to not do this again for another 5 years. Freeze this thing for a little while. I think the businesses might be able to swallow this a little bit easier than if it's it went up, it just went up last year and it went up this year. It might mean something to the businesses to say, hey, we plan on not revisiting this tax for X amount of time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Eric.
I think the only thing I can say towards that, I'm not in a position to promise you anything. I'm one of 7 people up here, and plus the mayor. But this is the last piece on the revenue side that it seems as though we're going to need to get to erase the structural deficit and get to a balanced budget. So I certainly can't foresee, we're not going to be in this situation again. We're not going to be trying to make the last push on the structural deficit. So I can't foresee a need to come back to this well again. And that's the best I can do. But
Okay, thanks. I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of sending this to council with recommendation for approval, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. It goes to council with a recommendation for approval next week. Thank you. Next is ordinance number 2019-11-064, ordinance amending Urbana City Code Chapter 22, Article 5, Section 2260 through Section 2265, amendment to hotel motel use tax. Elizabeth again.
So, as you probably know, we have a 7% hotel motel use tax in the city of Urbana. And as I believe I discussed with each of you individually, we had been working with Airbnb to enter into a voluntary collection agreement to have them collect this tax for their properties that they facilitate within the city of Urbana. However, they were unable to do that because they felt the need to prioritize those agreements for larger governments. So after some further discussion internally and checking in with the Airbnb representatives, we determined that essentially we could do this through a modification to the city code, which is what you are looking at tonight. The advantage of this approach is that it would capture that revenue not only from Airbnb, but from other facilitators like HomeAway and others with that type of business model. We've actually identified, I think we have a list of 4 that we think are operating within the city of Urbana. So what this would do is it would essentially level the playing field. They're essentially on a smaller scale in the same business as hotels and motels within the city of Urbana. And so all of those short-term types of rentals would be subject to the hotel motel tax. There's some other minor changes, but that's the important one.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or comments?
Just a comment, this tax has been passed, well, the Airbnb tax has been passed in Champaign. It went into effect.
I want to say January 1, they entered into a voluntary collection agreement, so there was no amendment to their city code.
They've had it for almost a year then?
Maybe I'm wrong about the
Right.
date, but
I
it's
think you're-
within the past year, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, Dennis.
And so how do we collect the names of the people that are actually running these? How do we identify them?
So what we're going to do is we're going to make these facilitators, the companies that are in that business, responsible for collecting and remitting to us. So we may never know individually exactly what properties are being used for Airbnb or other similar kinds of short-term rentals.
Bill?
Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
Do you know if they, when you're talking to them, do they collect that information? Like, will they even like give us a blank status to say there were X amount of properties, X amount of rentals that collected X amount of dollars?
Yeah, I think that they will cooperate and provide us with certain information, but I don't think they're going to provide all the details of exactly which property and how much, what the address is.
But they might give us those larger blanket numbers of, 1,000 properties had 6,000 rentals in that fiscal year. Here's your
Yeah, in fact,
revenue from that.
Yeah. I
'Cause we
mean,
would
once
wanna
they're
know
required
that.
to report, they have to report to us on our form. We collect information, I think, about how many nights and how much revenue, and then calculate the tax from that. So they'll have to report at least that amount of detail,
Okay.
but I'm not sure how much more we'll actually be able to get from them.
Well, we should ask them, just
Oh,
because
sure,
any
yes.
of that information is useful to us
Yes,
to know.
I've been asking because I would like to be able to estimate the revenue we'll receive from this. And
Sure.
after 6 months of asking, I still don't have the answer to that question.
I got you.
However, putting it in an ordinance will make that enforceable.
Yay. Thanks.
So when they, I know through Airbnb, if you rent a property, it'll tell you how much you're paying in taxes on your receipt or your agreement. Can we require them to do that so that we have some way of enforcing it to know whether, like, if we go online and see somebody's running something in Urbana and they're just charging a flat $30 or whatever, we don't know whether they're collecting tax for us or not?
Yeah, so for example, right now, I went on and kind of started the process for a property in Champaign, and it listed city tax on there. One of the issues, though, with verifying it that way is they don't always give very specific locations. So sometimes it's hard to tell, for example, when you're looking at that big map with all of the properties that are available, whether they're really in Urbana or just maybe a little bit outside of Urbana. So I believe we do have the right to audit, although from a practical point of view, we don't do that on any kind of regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Sharice?
Could you define facilitators for me? Kind of give me an idea of what that means?
So essentially, I'm going to give you my understanding. There is a legal definition here in the ordinance, but first I'll give you my understanding. My understanding is it's a company like Airbnb or HomeAway that basically serves as a conduit for property owners to list and then rent their property for short-term rentals. So Jim has provided us a legal definition which says a facilitator means any person who provides a means through which a person, operator, or operator's agent may offer a hotel room or motel room for rent, regardless of whether the rental or leasing charge is transferred through or processed by such facilitator or by a separate entity.
So we're depending on the facilitator to enforce the hotel tax?
The facilitator will be required to pay the tax to us.
And how will we, the city, receive that? Will they send us a check quarterly or something like that?
They'll probably, they should be filing monthly. So there's a form that, for example, any hotel currently in the city of Urbana fills out that lists certain information, including their receipts from rentals, and then they calculate the tax from that. So eventually, somewhere down the road, probably 6 months out, we may even be collecting it online, but we're not doing that right now.
Okay.
The one that Champaign passed, that's for all facilitators, or is that, I know that they had an agreement with Airbnb to collect for them, but
Right.
now the one they have now is that.
Champaign has a voluntary collection agreement with Airbnb. I'm not aware of any other
So that ours would be different.
agreement they have with other facilitators.
Are there other cities that have done what we're doing?
Sure. I think Springfield is an example of one that went this route of putting it in their city code.
Okay. Jared?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we send ordinance number 2019-11-064, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 22, Article 5, Section 22-60 through Section 22-65, which is an amendment to the hotel motel use tax, be sent forward to the full council with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
Moved by Jared and seconded by Eric. Any discussion? Oh, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And finally, we have ordinance number 2019-11-065, an ordinance approving the extension of final plat approval for Union Garden subdivision plan case number 2364 S18. Community Development. Kevin.
Okay, good evening. So I'll keep this relatively brief. Trinitas Development LLC is requesting a one-year extension to record the Union Gardens subdivision final plat. As you'll recall, this was originally approved by council back on February 4th of this year, and then council granted a 180-day extension to that original recording date, and that would expire on February 1st, 2020. Trinitas cannot record the plat until they close on the property, but they don't want to close on the property before February 2020, since they won't be able to begin construction at that time. So they're requesting this extension to allow them more time to take possession of the property and then record the plat. There are representatives from Trinitas that are here tonight who will go into more detail, but Basically, there are two main reasons for this request. One reason, which I just alluded to, they don't want to take possession of the property during the wintertime because they won't be able to start construction until spring when the weather allows for construction. The second reason is they're tracking several large residential projects in Champaign-Urbana, and the extension would give them some more time to analyze the housing data that they're getting to provide them with more certainty that there is demand for their product before they close on the property, record the plat, and start construction. Staff does not see any drawbacks to granting this request, the request for an extension, and we'd recommend approval of the request. I can take any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Kevin? I have one. I know staff is looking at changes in the subdivision code and manual practice, and one of those recommended changes was to move what we're voting on tonight, the extension of, extension of final plat approval to be an administrative function rather than a council vote. So what stage is that process in for approving the new subdivision code? Would it be approved before February 1st? And if so, since this subdivision was approved prior to the changes in the subdivision code, would it fall under the new rules, or how would that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the subdivision ordinance and manual of practice has gone to Plan Commission once already, but since it's they're really long documents, so we wanted to give Plan Commission at least a couple meetings to consider them, mull them over before making a recommendation to council. So we took it once last month. We'll be bringing it back to them on the 25th, I believe it is, for the second round. And then thereafter, based on how Plan Commission decides to, on how much time they think they'll need to, to consider it, we'd probably have a recommendation maybe sometime next month. I imagine it'll come in the early part of next year. Since it is a large document, we're not sure how much time City Council would want to have to look at it. Not sure exactly when it would come to council. It might happen by January. But I think since this was approved under the old subdivision ordinance, I'm pretty sure that would apply in this case. But I might need a legal determination on that.
And if this extension wasn't granted, they would have to go through the process again of filing the plat. It could be the same, but under the new ordinance, there might be changes they'd have to make.
Right. They'd need to go back through our plat process, so go through Plan Commission and then come back to council. And it's in all likelihood you'd be seeing the same exact plat that's already been approved back in February.
So the changes proposed in the subdivision ordinance probably wouldn't affect the plat that they submitted as far as requirements go?
Yeah, since the process started under the old subdivision ordinance and the preliminary plat was approved under the old subdivision ordinance, it's, that's when they got the ball rolling, was under the old ordinance, so we just carry that forward.
Okay. Any other questions? Sharice?
Yeah, it says that they believe that other projects will be fully leased, and that there will still be high demand for a planned Union Garden development, but an extension will give them additional time to analyze the housing market and will provide them with more certainty. So my question, I guess, is what if the housing market, I know there are quite a few new housing projects that have gone up since we approved the zoning change.
Mm-hmm.
So one is the Retreat, which is up now, but there is another housing project that is right next door in Champaign to where they're planning to put their. So are we waiting for them to determine whether or not it would matter, if their housing, if the housing is still needed or in demand for them. What's the process in Champaign, I guess, is what I want to kind of understand. And I talked to Lori Pearson about this. And so-
Yeah, so do you mean the process for the Champaign portion
Yeah,
of this
where are
project?
they? Where are they regarding progress in Champaign?
Yeah, and you can certainly ask them about it. It's my understanding that they're still working through getting building approvals. So they're still getting plan approval, so they haven't started construction or anything of that nature.
Okay, and so I know that whatever they do in Champaign-Urbana is coming second. So how is, I guess I just want to understand if they decide that there's not a demand, are they not they're going to decide not to build since that's what we seem to be waiting for.
Again, I think that's a good question to ask them.
Okay,
If
well,
you-
hi.
Okay, sounds like a
Come on
question
up.
for Trinitas.
Am I free to go?
I think you're free to go, but
I'll sit over
don't
here.
go too far.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm Jeff Knable. I'm a project executive with Trinitas Ventures.
And I'm Kimberly Hansen. I'm a project manager with Trinitas Ventures.
So, great questions, and this is something that we've been studying for quite some time. And if I could just give a little bit of background. So, we've been analyzing the marketplace, of course, and throughout this past year. As we got to the spring, we started to get questions from our investors about the marketplace. Of course, they were aware that there were many projects in the pipeline and coming to fruition. So an example of that is projects delivered in 2019, 2020, and 2021 in both, in the general broad market, including Champaign and Urbana, are about 1,378 units, or 3,200 beds. So it's an incredible marketplace with such high level of product. And I say that because we, of course, are also interested in bringing this project to the marketplace. And so as we look at how that new product is being absorbed, we see really positive signs. And an example of that is the marketplace, generally speaking, not just Champaign or just Urbana, but broadly both. The market is occupied 13% lower than it was last time. However, it's filled 742 more beds than last year. And keep in mind, the source for our market data reports in beds. They don't really report in units, given the nature of the university-centric marketplace here. They report in beds, so that's what we have as data here, excuse me. So the market is pre-leased today at 35%, which is a very strong number. That's 8% ahead of its pre-leasing from last year, and it has already leased 691 more beds than last year. So I say all of that to say, yes, there are a lot of projects that have come to this marketplace, but they are being absorbed really, really well according to the market data that we receive. Our investors were asking these questions of us in the springtime when we were expecting to close and start construction. They started asking these questions of us, which delayed us. We fed them answers as we understood them and got the data back from our partners. But it seemed when we had answered every one of their questions, more questions would come our way. And so we're rounding through summer. Now we're looking at a fall start. And this is when they told us officially, let's hold on and let's look at the 2020 deliveries and that data before we green light the project. So it's a very frustrating situation for us to be in. We understand it's frustrating for the city as well. We appreciate your consideration of this extension. It's a painful decision for us because we are now having to extend our land contracts, which requires more hard money out of pocket, meaning money we will never get back. And I'm not whining, I'm just stating a fact that it's painful for us as well to be delayed. But the market data indicates that there is demand. We continue to like this project because of its differentiation from other projects, being a cottage-style project with amenities that we think appeal to a broad base of residents. So we're still very excited. We're still committed to internally to making this project go forward. We've asked Champaign to extend the plat, and they were gracious enough to accommodate that request, so that we really just have the gift of time to study additional data as it becomes available and make a prudent decision.
Okay.
Eric?
So maybe this is information that's confidential within your company, but I'll ask it anyway. Are your investors looking entirely at go, no go here, or go here as opposed to go in some other community?
So this is this project as a whole is in both Champaign and Urbana. So
Yeah.
this project would be completed in both Champaign and Urbana. It wouldn't be one or the other.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I by another community, I don't mean Champaign.
Okay.
I mean another community than Champaign, Urbana altogether. Are they looking at a broad range of places to put their money?
Well,
that
they're certainly
respect?
active in other communities, but I don't believe they're comparing this project in this community with other projects in other communities. I think that's, those are not weighing,
Yeah,
one
that-
is not weighing
that-
on the other.
That's not the case, okay.
Yeah, Dennis.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could, so the concern is whether they'll actually go forward and actually complete the project versus maybe drop it because it doesn't look viable after this evaluation?
Well, I think what we're making sure here is that the data is consistent through the new year with the preliminary data that we have in hand today.
You just want to see a longer
Exactly.
timeline of data input.
Exactly right.
Is it another thing that you would be considering, and maybe this is just a technical question about choices or something, but you know, are you also looking at the kinds of units that are being preferred by the local population? But you're talking about just beds, but I mean, are you going to be discovering whether 2 in an apartment is being preferable over 4 or 3 or 6 or something like that? I mean, are you looking at clusters of beds per house and the style of construction that you're actually considering? Or how many of what that you're going to build?
The unit mix for our plan is very unlikely to change. We've done a lot of study on that before we even drew up the plans and submitted them to the city for review. So it is very unlikely that we'll change the unit mix. We're confident in our product and in our unique offering. We believe that it will be well received by residents.
Okay.
Yeah, Jared.
Another question, why January of 2021? If you were going to analyze that data, you're not going to buy the property then either. You're going to ask for another extension in January until construction.
Until
So why,
springtime.
why January 2021?
Well, I guess it gets back to just we're asking for the gift of time to give us the maximum flexibility to study the data as it becomes available in early 2020, spring 2020 timeframe. I would admit that you know, we will likely have what we need in place by summer at the latest, but it is some additional flexibility that we're asking for there.
And the other question is, without divulging hard numbers, and you're eating a hard cost every month that construction is not happening, every month that it's not occupied. Without giving hard numbers, is that a percentage that you guys are going to be able to live with for another year and 6 months while you wait to see if the market says yes or no before it just becomes totally unviable because you've already sunk so much into it that they're like, no, you already put 15% over the top of what our margin was in the first place. Cut it.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a similar question that we got from our internal investment committee when Kim and I show up and ask for budget approval to continue to spend those hard dollars as we round the corner and hopefully look to a closing soon. So we did seek and we did receive approval internally to continue to fund the project, including the hard costs associated with land acquisition and other costs that we're spending to keep this project alive. So that is not my concern. I do have approval for that.
Okay, thanks.
When you said there were 3,200 beds added, over what time period?
So this schedule of new deliveries includes 2019, 2020, and there's one here for 2021. It's called Gather Urbana.
Oh, yeah.
So of the list, there are two, the Retreat and Gather, located in Urbana. The rest seem to be located in Champaign.
And then when you said 35% pre-lease, that's before they're actually open and
Correct.
and have their occupancy permit. So, is there just a separate market for new construction? Do you consider at all what the vacancy rates in older apartments, or is it you mostly look at the new construction when you're deciding where to build?
Because we're a new construction product, our data focuses mostly on new construction. Yeah, that's that competitive set that we consider competitive projects that are built in 2007 or newer.
Okay, great, thanks. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I had one and forgot it quickly.
No, okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move to send this ordinance to the full council with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, I'll second.
It's been moved by Eric and seconded by Dennis to send to council with recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? Oh, Jared?
Not related for you guys, just a direction to Brandon and community development folks. It's been a hot minute since we've gotten an update on some of our outstanding projects and where they stand, and it would be wonderful to hear not just from representatives but from community development on where some of those things are at. Just wanted to make that comment.
We'll arrange that.
Oh, I did have a question.
Yeah, Sharice.
By the time you guys get around to building this, won't your costs be like way increased compared to, like, even if you start it next summer or spring, if you're talking about not starting, you start talking about not starting until 2021? Or are you thinking that you can start in the spring?
We are still hopeful we can start in the spring of 2020.
And by the time you finish, it'll be in Urbana, at least it'll be, what, 2021? Because you're going to do Champaign first.
I think
Kim is, speak,
No,
girls, like
no.
that.
The project will construct Champaign and Urbana all for delivery at the same time.
Oh, at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Logistically, we'll start on one end or the other just because of the way construction accesses the site, but the project will open in its entirety. It is the current plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Just an announcement before we close.
Oh, and Dennis has a quick announcement.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that this coming weekend, November 15th, 16th, and 17th, there'll be a delegation of 6 people traveling to Thionville, France, to represent Urbana as that sister city partner celebrates its 75th anniversary from the liberation of their town from enemy occupation during World War II. We're going to go bring some gifts, meet some people, eat some good French food, walk in a parade, or at least maybe watch a couple parades. They're going to do a reenactment. They're going to do a reenactment this year, not in Thionville itself, but in a town of Mille, which is about 10 kilometers north. So that'll be very interesting, and we're going to be going soon and coming back next week, and maybe we'll probably have a good slideshow for you later on.
Okay, looking forward to that. All right, seeing no further business. Oh, Diane.
I feel compelled to add the disclaimer that the travel is at personal expense, not public expense, as well as the gifts.
Yeah, that's fair. We're paying our own way, and still we think it's important to do because it represents the global friendships that this community supports, as kind of opposed to some cities nearby who have none.
Okay, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.